Say she might not. She knows everything about our
I
organization.
do.
What are you doing
I brought
here?
you some hot off the press.
Oh, good. It's the CDC.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
I
it's
just
like
called to
that.
get in her face so she'd call me to do stuff,
All right.
because she's the best organization going.
Well, that's
What are you
nice. This
doing?
meeting is being recorded. Okay,
Out.
got it.
Come on. Luna.
All right, so
Come on.
you guys, let's figure out the best way to do this. So if we have three people here, bear with
Sure.
us. One moment. Because it's going to be hard. Maybe you guys should come here, like a little preschool.
Yeah, and then when you share the screen, I can just we can just look at my computer.
That's an idea. Okay. And now Ellen's saying.
I'm going, I'm out of here.
Hey, we have new programs.
Yeah,
Well,
what
some
are you
things you
doing? Are
might-
you gonna make it fast?
Huh? No, I'll make it fast. I'll make it fast. All right, guys. Good evening. I'm Miranda with New Mexicans to Prevent Gun Violence, and I'm standing in a corner by a bookcase. And we have Dr. Chandler with us, and Devin and Ellen. So hello. I'm going to be going through what we're talking about today is the issue of gun violence in New Mexico and in our state. I'm sure many of you probably saw all over the news today the CDC's latest on how bad gun violence is in our country and in the state of New Mexico. It is the leading cause of death for children, both here and nationally. It just superseded DWI. I don't know if that's correct English. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Most disabled participants screen sharing, okay. All right, Devin, why isn't it letting me share my screen? Let's see.
How are you?
Oh, I know how I'm gonna do it. Can you guys see that?
You okay?
No,
No?
um,
Did something bad happen today?
no, it turns out it's okay, but, Cora was exposed to COVID on Friday.
Oh, that's not
So
good.
maybe try now.
So far tested, but
Okay.
she's had a little cold in between, so.
All
traveled.
right, guys, bear with us.
Oh, come on.
Share screen.
Come on.
Now it says, but it doesn't have my.
Well, everybody's gonna get that COVID, it seems, huh?
Is it-
That female's gonna be a super spreader.
Yeah, but why isn't it on my?
Well, I don't know, but
Well, the
So I need to
reception
get it from here.
reception.
will be- Yeah, we were
Here
upset
we
after
are.
that call, that was a super
It
spreader.
has to be open. Okay, I always forget that.
Nobody was wearing
I
masks.
can't even go back to Zoom. I was flying yesterday. Nobody's.
Yeah, nobody was wearing masks.
Here,
the Zoom?
Zoom.
It was
Thank
really
you.
crowded.
And then share screen. You guys are very patient. Okay. All right. Let's see. Can everybody see that? Maybe go like this. Okay, we'll go with it. We'll go with it. Slideshow. Okay, so who we are, our group is called New Mexicans to Prevent Gun Violence, and we began back in 2013. We're almost 10 years old now, which is crazy. We started because of the Sandy Hook shooting, and we were just a group of concerned citizens and residents who were shocked that something like that could happen. But I do say that with some bit of shame, because gun violence disproportionately affects people of color.
Stop.
And when I started doing research on gun violence and the NRA, that became quickly apparent. So we started guiding all of our programs to address that issue as well. I actually knew nothing about gun violence. I did not even know what the acronym for the NRA stood for. I'm not kidding. I was getting my PhD in postmodernism. So when I say I knew nothing, I knew nothing. So I put down that research and started researching the issue of gun violence in our state. And why is this not going to the next? One more thing. Let me just go here. Dr. Chandler actually just brought this in. In 2020, there's a new report by the CDC. And if anybody's interested, Johns Hopkins Center for Gun Violence Prevention, who just merged with the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence, did an excellent report on this a week ago. And Dr. Webster, I think, was the one who wrote it. So if anybody wants that in more detail, I'm happy to send that to them. Last year in the United States, 45,222 people died by gun violence. That was a 15% increase from 2019. So now on average, and we're also seeing in terms of 2021 that it's also going up, especially in New Mexico. I know some of you aren't in New Mexico, but New Mexico is seeing, especially in Albuquerque, a real spike. We lost 7 people to gun violence in the past 5 days in New Mexico, and 2 of those were 16-year-old kids. There was also a 35% increase in firearm homicides. And so we might say, well, how come this is happening? Well, 2019 saw a record number of gun sales, and nearly twice as many showed up at crime scenes. We know that when there's a spike in gun sales, there's going to be between 6 and 8 months and a year later a spike in gun deaths. The research in this report and the CDC's report did show that states with stronger gun laws have fewer deaths. And I'm proud to say that New Mexico has, since we've started, and we worked hard to get this done, we've passed 3 gun violence prevention bills, and we're working on more. And I'll talk about what those were and why we chose them in a minute. I'm having this weird thing because I don't want to put my back to these guys. But now we'll go to New Mexico. So in New Mexico, when you see this chart, you see a definite rise in gun violence from 2016, it plateaued a bit, and then from 2017, it keeps going up and up. We thought 2019 would have been the most violent year for gun deaths in New Mexico, but sadly, 2020 actually was even higher. So you can hear this in terms of children 1 through 18. It's been a steady and disconcerting rise in gun violence. So when you think, well, how many people are we losing every year? So in 2019, we lost 472 people to gun violence. I don't think I know 35 of those were children. And when you think of the 472, keep in mind that doesn't include injury. So I talk a lot to a trauma room surgeon at UNM, and he said every shift he's getting 3 victims a night. And so he said, yeah, they leave in a wheelchair. I don't know if I made their lives any better. They're going to suffer for the rest of their lives. And the majority of these are young men of color, right? And so that's where, again, where I said this is an issue that deals with civil rights and racism, and I do believe that we need to really, really look at how we, as every community, can uplift these communities of color so that they are not suffering from the gun violence that they're suffering from. In 2020, we see, this says 481. There were actually 505 because that didn't include non-residents. So when we look at intentionality, obviously suicide is a huge problem. We're the 4th highest. We have the 4th highest rate in the nation for suicide. The majority are homicide, and 3% legal intervention. We do have an issue of police violence with firearms in New Mexico that should be probably addressed today and not tomorrow. I don't think the crime package we passed was aiming at that. I think it was actually aiming to probably do more harm than good, but that's just my opinion. In terms of, so here we go, here it's broken down in 2020. So you see those 481 residents, there were actually 505 because 24 were non-residents. It's the same for 2019, 18 were non-residents, which goes up to 490. And for the most part, we will triple that when it comes to injuries. On average, 1 or more New Mexico residents dies by firearm every day. And now on average, we're losing close to 3 children every month to gun violence. In 2019, firearms accounted for 354 emergency room visits. 223 of those were hospitalizations. So like I said, you think about it, the young man is leaving in a wheelchair for the rest of their lives, and their quality of life and their ability to lead happy lives is greatly diminished. Now, this one you might want to sit down because you might fall over when you hear this. The annual cost of firearm-related injuries and deaths in New Mexico is estimated at, usually if there's a bigger group, I make everybody guess, but it's at $1.8 billion with a B in New Mexico. So if we don't want to do isn't that not crazy? And that came from a congressional report that looked at all states, and what they were looking at, like I said, as loss of quality of life, loss of the ability to be employed. Most of these young men are on Medicaid, and I know one young woman who was shot multiple times when she was 21, and she will be in a wheelchair the rest of her life with a host of other problems, and it costs her every single year $1.5 million a year, and she's young. So if this is happening on a regular basis, it adds up. And as I said, people of color and indigenous populations are disproportionately impacted by this gun violence epidemic, although sometimes I wonder if we should be calling this a pandemic. I'm going to skip this slide because it's a lot of verbiage, and it's 5 o'clock or 6, and I know people are tired. Child firearm deaths from 2015 to 2019. I brought up this slide because I think it's really important. We are almost half and half when it comes to suicide and homicide. So if you remember looking at the previous pie, it showed that 63% were homicides for adults. In New Mexico, and this is not normal for most states, we're much closer to it being 50-50 in terms of homicide. And that does include undetermined and legal intervention. As I said, in 2020, we saw 34 children shot and killed. That was actually one less than the year before. In gun injury in Albuquerque is probably where we're hit heaviest in terms of homicide and violence with crimes. In 2020, there were 405 gunshot victims that came to UNH Trauma Center. Now, not all of those were from Albuquerque because that is the trauma center where they do get flown in, but the majority were. One ER nurse reported that she sees 2 to 10 gunshot victims on any given day when she's working at UNM Trauma. What they're concerned about is the uptick. So in 2018, especially when it comes to youth, they were seeing between 5 to 9 injuries every 3 months. But then in 2019, that really took off. I have a quote from Dr. Miskimis, who's the trauma surgeon who I talk to on a regular basis. And he said that we've essentially, since that time, doubled the number of gun injuries and firearm injuries in those under the age of 18. And now in our most recent quarter, I believe it was 13, which kind of shows the overall trend we're seeing in general. And that was from last year, and this year it's already going up. So that's the sad part of this presentation, and now I'll talk about what we do to address gun violence in New Mexico. One of our big campaigns is a gun safety campaign. We're actually expanding it this year. It mostly dealt with youth and making sure guns get locked up. Dr. Chandler would give out free gun locks and ask his practice. I was so happy would ask is there a gun in the home and is it locked up? And I was so excited. And I remember the nurse saying, "Why are you so excited about that?" I said, "You have no idea." Anyway, that was just getting my physical. So we do try to really educate our parents about locking up guns. We've done several campaigns on this. We now actually want to expand it to folks suffering from dementia. What we've noticed at our gun buybacks is that a lot of usually women are coming in with their partners having dementia, and those guns need to be removed. And so they are literally bringing to the buyback saying, "Get rid of these. This is not a time to have a gun in our home." So we're trying to now reach people who are in elder care to get gun safety information in terms of when might not be the safest time to have a gun. And then we also do drive to their homes and dismantle any guns they want. We drive all over New Mexico dismantling guns for people when it's not during the gun buyback. I just went to Belen and cut up my first AR-15, which made me extremely happy. The woman was a little nervous about how happy I was. So again, one of the strongest predictors of adolescent suicide is a gun in a home. And I always show this pie because it's really important. It shows that 10.7 youth in our state live in a home with an unlocked gun, and they have suicidal ideation. And not only is that a tragedy waiting to happen, it's 100% preventable. And so it's really, how do we reach these children how do we reach these parents to get their guns locked up? So we've done a PSA secure gun campaigns. Right now we're about to do a PSA. The New Mexico Department of Health gave us funds to do it, so we'll have gun safety, lock up your gun ads on radio throughout all of New Mexico, targeted more at our more conservative areas probably. And then we also hand out a crazy amount of free gun locks. And what we find interesting when we're handing these out is it's not so much as somebody getting a free gun lock as how much it reminds them to lock up their gun. I have so many parents who will say, oh my gosh, thank you. I keep forgetting to lock up my gun. And during COVID, they were saying, and my kids are home now with COVID. And one woman literally said, yeah, my gun's underneath the seat. She has a 4-year-old where the seat is, and it's not locked up where she was driving. And you just, want to bang your head against the wall, but you just have to kindly, say, hey, it's best to lock up that gun. So in terms of legislation, like we saw with the CDC report and the Johns Hopkins report, that those states that actually have gun violence prevention laws, it makes a difference. The argument might be said, well, look at New Mexico, you pass these 3 laws and gun violence is going up. It takes a while for them to kick in. And we also need more. So when we first started, we actually I thought it'd be so simple, just to get background checks at gun shows. I thought that's the easiest thing. Like, who would want to think that somebody should get a background check at a gun show? And we actually got it through the House and Senate, but it was filibustered by a Democrat on the Senate floor. And so it was at that moment that we realized this was going to be much harder than we thought, because we were very naive. And so then we did go back past the background check law, and then we started looking at the data. And whenever we look at legislation, we ask 2 questions. Is it possible in the political environment? And would it make a difference? And the domestic violence relinquishment bill was a yes with both of those, because one, we were at that time when we passed it, I think we had the second highest rate for interpersonal homicide, and the majority were with a firearm. And we also thought, is it possible that we might even get some bipartisan support, because why would somebody want a domestic violence abuser to be able to keep their gun? And I was wrong. We did get one Republican who did vote for it, but other than that, we didn't. And that was disappointing to me, because I thought that was an opportunity that we could have come together. The next bill we passed was called the Extremist Protection Order. And we did this for 2 reasons. One, would it make a difference? Yes, in terms of suicide. So this is a law that oftentimes somebody is deregulated, either having problems with violence or substance abuse, and they have a lot of firearms, and it's not safe for them or their family or their partners or friends or whoever. And so a person then can go to law enforcement and say, hey, you know what, Uncle John really isn't doing well. Smoking a lot more meth, just bought a brand new semi-automatic handgun, but he has no record on him. So they would petition to a judge and say, I think this is time for this person not to have a firearm until things cool down, and nothing goes on their record. And they do get their gun back. They get the gun returned when things get better. Right now, this week in Santa Fe, our DA is filing an ERPO where a woman had shot up. She was suffering from dementia. She had shot up her door, but there's no crime, but it's not a good time for her to have a gun. So that's where an extremist protection order would happen. The horrible incident in Albuquerque on Sunday was a perfect example of when an extremist protection order, tell me if I'm talking too fast, but I want to know because I can't see you, so you guys are telling me. They can put it in the chat. The man who shot and killed the 16-year-old girl and boy he had been sexually abusing the 16-year-old girl. And so the mother did everything she could. She went and got an emergency protective order to keep him out of the house and was waiting on the permanent order. The permanent order is when the domestic violence firearm relinquishment bill would come in, but not under an emergency. So an ERPO can can be used to get that gun out of the home. I know of 2 instances in New Mexico last year where that's exactly what the sheriffs did. They knew that it wasn't going to end well, and they immediately made sure that that gun was removed. Unfortunately, the sheriff in Albuquerque, the sheriff's department, said to this man, "You can go get your clothes and you can keep your gun." So that's extremely disheartening to hear. And we'll go after that. Legislative goals for 2023. So what we really want to be on the side of prevention and intervention. We don't ever want to pass laws that would unintentionally put young men of color in jail longer. So for instance, when they passed a law enhanced penalties for a felon in possession with a firearm, we were not in support of that, and because it's not going to make any difference. And if we could incarcerate our way out of this, we would have done that a long time ago. That's not working. So what we want to do is create an Office of Gun Violence Prevention and Intervention, so we can get on the prevention side. So it would fund things like violence intervention programs, where we have previous gang members and those who are incarcerated going and talking to these youth. And giving them an honorable exit and getting them into the systems they need. It'd also work on suicide prevention, gun safety PSAs, better data collection. The data collection in New Mexico is horrible, and it makes it very difficult for us to really see where is the problem and why. So it is a heavy lift. We're asking for a $20 million reoccurring fund. You might say, why $20 million? Well, we put $20 million into DWI every single year, but we have 3 times as many people being shot and killed than are dying in DWI accidents. And I'm glad we are putting that money into DWI, but I do feel we need to start putting some money behind prevention. We also want to pass a child access prevention law. And again, in my opinion, I think child access prevention laws are really to scare the gun owner to lock up their guns, because they don't want their guns taken away and they don't want to go to jail. How much do they actually work? I think they do make a difference. Florida has had one in place, of all places, for decades, and it shows us that they do work. But they also work in terms of school shootings. The majority of youth who are committing school shootings in this country, lo and behold, get it from their homes. So I think if we could combine child access prevention with a big PSA campaign to get guns locked up, that would be a good way to go. And then we're also looking at a ghost gun ban. I'm somewhat interested in it. I'm not 100% convinced it would make a huge difference in New Mexico. We did lose a 16-year-old about 3 weeks ago to a ghost gun he had printed out, and a 14-year-old boy stole it and ended up shooting him with his own gun. But I think that should be handled more on the federal level at this point, and maybe we could match the state level. The state law to the federal level.
Sorry, what is a ghost gun?
Oh, sorry, guys. And sometimes I just assume everybody knows this, and they're like, what is she talking about? Ghost guns are done on a 3D printer, and there's no serial number, so they can't be traced for crime. And the ship sailed on it. That software is already out there. We are seeing an uptick, I think from 2016 to 2020, there were 20,000 crimes where ghost guns had been used nationally. So there is definitely a trend, and it's disconcerting, but I don't know if in New Mexico, I think there's so many other things we need to go after, but we'll see. Work with youth. So like I said, maybe I didn't say, the majority of the work we do right now is with youth. We've created a program called Murals to End Gun Violence, and this gives opportunity for youth, oftentimes living in high-risk situations, have been victims of gun violence, have committed gun violence. Oftentimes it's both, and this gives them an opportunity to really think about what their message of nonviolence and peace would be, and also gives them a place to be during the summer, which is crucial. We do things like "Don't shoot, let our kids grow up" signs that youth make, and they put them all over the neighborhood. Just simple ideas that anybody can do. A lot of youth advocacy every year. We do a die-in at the Capitol where the students wear T-shirts with names of kids who have been lost in school shootings. They do this every single year. We always get about 400, and they fill up the rotunda of the Capitol and lie there for 7 minutes, and I've seen it move senators and representatives and all our elected officials because they see the pain that these youth are going through. I do think they are the voice for this, not me, or it's our youth have to be the ones who are in the forefront, and we should scaffold them and get them what they need and help them lead the charge. Again, that's one of our die-ins at the Capitol. And another program we have is it's an art quilt that we make, and we go from school to school. They choose a young person who they know. I've never been to a school where they haven't known somebody that has been lost to gun violence, and that person's put on a T-shirt, and then the youth create messages about gun violence prevention. And we've done this in 28 schools. And what's amazing about it when you see it all put out is that you see our youth having a conversation about gun violence, and they seem to be okay with having that conversation. And so I think there's a lot adults can learn that if our youth are able to have a conversation about this issue, I think we need to all sit at the table as well. Our other program with youth is called the Student Pledge Against Gun Violence, and this was created by a woman named Mary Louise Groh, who sometimes lives in Santa Fe. And it's we've implemented in schools throughout New Mexico. Thousands of students have signed the pledge, and hundreds have worked on our gun violence prevention projects. Does it work? We don't know for sure, but we did see in the Youth Resilience Survey that they do in New Mexico that in the areas we did this consecutively for 4 years straight, there was a 54% reduction of youth bringing weapons to school. Now, we can't say that's because of us, but we say it's because of us because nobody else was talking to them about the issue of gun violence prevention. And these are youth-driven, so it's their voices speaking to their peers about, hey, let's not bring our guns to school. Nobody wants to live with this kind of fear. And basically what the pledge says is, I will never bring a gun to school. I will never use a gun to solve a personal dispute, and I will use my influence to keep my friends from using guns in personal disputes. I've even spoken to NRA members that are, this is one of the few things we do, I think might be the only thing that we do that they like. You guys don't need to see all this. This is a example. This was Espanola Valley High School. They wanted to make life-size cardboard cutouts of youth that had been lost to gun violence and do an old school assembly where they read out their names and then read what the students loved to do. And it really brought it home for those students. At that school, every single student except for 5 signed the student pledge that day. But once again, it was the student voices. This was one young man reading about what a student, what the student who died, what they loved, and I think his name was Roger Montoya. And he actually went to University of Denver and chose gun violence prevention as his leadership class that he wanted to take based on the work he did with the student pledge. It really inspired him to do more. But we do all kinds of things with them. So here we're planting a garden. One year we did Day of the Dead altars in, gosh, it was like 15 schools, and it was at the altars were at a museum for 6 months. And so it was neat because then the parents got to come and see the work that their students, that their kids had done, but also get to see strong messages of prevention. And there they are they wanted to plant a tulip garden in the fall and have it come up in the spring. And these are kids signing the student pledge. But as you see, it gets kids thinking and involved about this issue. And there's so few outlets for them to talk about the issue of gun violence prevention. And I know from working with our youth that they're scared, they're frustrated, and they're beyond confused why adults in their community are doing so little to keep them safe. I don't care what community you're in, they are scared when they go to school. And then they will all hand them in. Again, that's another garden. My favorite project that we do is called Murals to End Gun Violence. So as you can see, I was an art major. So the work with youth was going so well, we actually thought, what if we started doing murals in schools? People said, you are insane. In New Mexico, NRA loving New Mexico, nobody's going to let you do a gun violence prevention mural in a school. And well, that just made me really want to try because everybody was like, I couldn't do it, so I had to do it. So we've now done, I know I'm bragging a little bit here, but our group has done 11 gun violence prevention murals, and we have 3 more slated for next year. So it can be done. And it's an amazing way for our youth to, again, have that conversation and decide on the imagery. This is 100% done by them. We hire Warren Montoya from Resonate Art. He's a muralist, but also an art teacher, so he's a perfect combination, and he helps facilitate the process. This mural was interesting. We actually got kicked out of the high school we were working in. It was Bernalillo High School, because the principal was mad that we had these bullets here, and you can't see this in this picture, but on the bullets it said anger, alcohol, drugs, and this is what the youth had come up with, what a bad combination would be. And he didn't want it. And the students said, well, we just simply asked why not. And he said, that's it, the mural's done. And this had been a group of youth who did a lot of drugs, and definitely had lost people to gun violence. Some of them had committed gun violence. And we thought, we can't let these kids have worked so hard on this. So Warren Montoya is from Santa Ana Pueblo. So he went to his governor on the Pueblo and said, do you have a place where we could just paint this on panels? And the governor was like, yeah, sure. So he gave us the wellness center, and we painted it on panels. And then we thought, well, now what are we going to do with it? So it's actually became going on a tour. It went to the Sandoval County Courthouse for a year. Then it went to Russ Medical Center for a year, which is a hospital here, or in Rio Rancho. And then it was at the Santa Fe Convention Center. And once the COVID comes down, it's going to UNM Trauma, where they see a lot of gun victims. So it was a happy story, and it was also at a Parkland event in a park. So it had a really good story, and it also showed these youth that you don't take no for an answer, and sometimes you just have to find a workaround, and that was our workaround. That's the group. They were an amazing group of young men and women. This was a mural we did at the Gang Intervention Center, and this was with a group of youth who are trying to get out of gangs or stay away from gangs, and they did amazing work, and they were truly an inspirational group of young men and women. And we'd also done them at teenage drug treatment centers, and again, gun violence is a multifaceted problem that needs a multi-pronged approach, and drugs are very much a part of it. So that's why we really wanted to do one, and maybe more, at teenage drug treatment centers. And it also gives these kids something to do, because rehab at the age of 16 isn't fun. It's tedious, it's boring, and it's hard. So this gives them something else to focus on as well. This was our second mural. It was at Capitol High. All these murals are still up. And then our last mural we did is at Mark Armijo Charter School, and that will be permanently displayed there. And so I think that is it. I hope I didn't talk your. These are oh gosh, no, I'm sorry, it's not. My fourth favorite program is called Guns to Gardens. So that was the AR-15 I cut up the other day. So we also were seeing that part of the problem in New Mexico was that we were awash in guns. We have more guns per capita than most any other state. And a lot of people don't know what to do with those guns. At first I was like, oh, gun buybacks don't work. But this woman approached me and showed me pictures of a gun buyback that had happened in Albuquerque with huge piles of semi-automatic handguns. I was like, gun buybacks work. And so we created this program, Guns to Gardens, where we cut the gun up and then we send it to Raw Tools in Colorado, and they forge them into gardening tools. We, for the most part, do them at the police stations. In 2 weeks we're not, which will be interesting. We'll be at a church. As you can see, this was one gun buyback. Those were, I think we took in 196 guns that day, and they're dismantled on site to ATF standards. And then we don't give cash because we don't want somebody to turn in 3 guns and go buy a new gun. So we give grocery cards and gas cards. Ostensibly, somebody could sell those, but we do notice from our anonymous survey that we asked for them to fill out that over 63% right now are bringing in their guns for safety reasons. They really don't know what to do with them, and they don't want them to get in unsafe hands. A lot of parents with teenagers with suicidal ideation, a lot of widows, a lot of people with somebody suffering from dementia, a lot of guns that are not, they're not in good working order. There's a whole bunch of semi-automatic handguns out there that are blowing up hands, and they just want to get rid of them. So it's a service that we offer to the community. And then on days we're not doing the gun buybacks, then I will drive out to somebody's home. I can't give them a gift card because that's considered a sale, but me and a volunteer who's very good with guns will drive out. So if anybody knows anybody with guns that need to be destroyed, you can contact us and we will go take care of it. 33% of the guns we've brought in have been semi-automatic handguns and assault rifles. And to date, we've taken in 1,037 guns, but I'm not counting. And that was Santa Fe gun buyback that we did, and you can see how many semi-automatic handguns that were brought in. And then they're transformed into gardening tools. If you love this program, you can go on our website or Facebook page, and we sell these, and all the money goes directly to buying more gift cards. So 100% of your sale goes to more gift cards for our next gun buyback. So that is my presentation, and here's my contact info if you want it, and I can give it to Devin as well. And I'll take any questions. I hope I didn't talk too quickly. They're asleep. Does anyone have any questions?
There's someone
Oh.
raising their hand.
Emily.
Yeah, it's actually not a question, but I just loved that Guns to Gardens because
Hold
it's
on. I'm sorry, go ahead. You were on mute or on my low volume.
okay. I just loved the Guns to Gardens because it reminds me of turning swords into plowshares and spears into pruning hooks. It's just
Exactly.
fabulous.
Oh, and I forgot to say that it's I can't believe I forgot this. On June 11th, it will become a national movement. So we partnered with other groups around the country that were doing similar programs. And I had bought the URL to Guns to Gardens. So I said, you guys, you take it. We'll make Guns to Gardens a national program. And so on June 11th, there will be, I think we're up to 12 gun buybacks throughout the country. That will be Guns to Gardens. And we want to make it the first annual Guns to Gardens National Buyback Day.
That is so cool.
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
So at Temple Beth Shalom, what are just like some of the very first basic steps that we could take
Hey,
to
Max,
start
no.
doing all these things? Like letting people know about all of this is one thing, but also just like, something directly that we can do just to start,
No, that sounds good. Let me think about it. I think, I doubt your parents, the parents in your preschool probably aren't gun owners. I'm trying to think.
Well, they might be, though.
They might be, you never know.
Totally
That's
worth
true.
it.
Yeah.
Or-
I think one thing, making sure that parents are locking up their guns. We have free gun locks and gun safety information for you.
Okay.
So if somebody wanted to spearhead that, I think it's better it comes from somebody within your community to make sure guns are getting locked up. You can also do a gun buyback here. We can have police show up, and then we will we do that for safety, but also they run it through NCIC. NCIC is to see if it's stolen or a crime gun. We've never gotten a crime gun because criminals don't go kill somebody and then want a gift card of groceries. We have had I think 5 stolen guns to date, and they had all been stolen years ago. But that's something you can do. We're happy to help facilitate a gun buyback. We're trying to do them at churches now and take them away from the law enforcement, but we do want law enforcement there for obvious reasons.
Okay.
So that's something, definitely something we could do. And then if you wanted to do, a gun violence prevention art project, even with adults, we do those.
Okay.
Any.
Also lobbying when the legislature.
Oh yeah, lobbying, definitely.
Yeah, so that's a big deal.
Yeah,
Okay.
getting calls and letters, especially if you know anybody, if your church is tied to any churches in our southern or more conservative areas, 10 calls from Raton is worth 100 in Santa Fe. So I don't know if there's any way to do any outreach in different areas, but anybody who knows, maybe reach out to your is it congregation, and and see, because that we want to reach those folks, and they're hard to reach.
Okay.
So doing it through religious centers and churches and synagogues is probably the way to go.
Okay.
So that would be a great way. Good.
Okay.
All right. Does anybody else have anything?
Great presentation.
I can't really see it. I'm in this corner. So. It's the oddest presentation I've ever had to do in my life. I felt like that's the kid that done something bad at school standing in the corner. Anyway,
So I think, Devin, the looking at safe storage of firearms, locked up ammunition separate from the weapon, is really important. And part of that is to educate parents that the risk of having a gun unsecured is much greater to the family than having the gun unsecured because someone is going to break into the house.
right.
And we saw that tragically with the recent death
The
of an
4-year-old,
infant son of
2-year-old.
a
Right.
Santa Fe police officer.
But it's not just for parents too, it should be everybody, because many people might not have kids who have guns in the house, they need to be locked up too, because they could accidentally kill someone if they're drunk or they're this.
No, it's true. Yeah.
And parents
So,
to
because we have a
feel
lot of older people
comfortable
here.
about asking if there's a sleepover, if there's a day over.
Right.
Do you have a gun in the house?
Yeah,
And is
you
it
could have,
secure?
as parents, to make sure that's a really good thing.
And we have all that safety information for you guys on pamphlets, so you
Oh,
can
okay.
hand it. That's everything he just said,
Okay.
which is very important. No, but it is, especially the play date.
Yeah. make
The
sure
play
there's no
date thing,
guns.
it's an uncomfortable question, but that's especially you wouldn't believe how many people who you wouldn't think would have a firearm do.
And I think with adolescents, since there was just another piece in the Times about how stressed adolescents are and levels of anxiety and
Suicide.
depression, being sure that there's not access to a firearm. And also to emphasize the cost, both financially and socially, for gun injury, violence injury, rather than, we see on the news all about homicides. We don't see a lot about suicides, and actually in the CDC report, one of the areas that showed increase, particularly in suicide, were in young suicide, 10 to 18 years of age, were Native Americans and indigenous Alaskans. So that's a problem that strikes us right here in New Mexico.
It's a serious problem.
I actually did think of a question. If somebody thinks someone in their family, their household is suicidal, does that fall under that extreme risk?
It's one of the main reasons why we passed it.
So they would
yeah.
just call the police and say, come get my husband's gun or whatever.
Yeah, and there's due process. So the police go to a judge. And New Mexico is the only place where you have to go to the police first because they insisted. But in our state, and I think in any state, the police also include the district attorney's office, which I think that might be an easier place for people to go potentially, or potentially not. Then the DA or the law enforcement petitions to a judge and says, I do feel that this person's telling the truth and that somebody in their home has suicidal ideation. But when we were looking at the numbers in New Mexico in terms of suicide, we thought we need to start passing laws on that will help in terms of prevention and also work on prevention. We did get $1 million this last session on suicide prevention for teenagers. And so I know that when I say we, that New Mexico did, not us, thank God, I would not know what to do with that. But they're going to really target our younger population, because as Dr. Chandler said, we are seeing such an uptick of suicide, not just in New Mexico, but in the United States. And I think a lot of it, COVID was really hard. And then in addition to that, we got money to do it's called the Gun Shop Project, where you have people that train gun shop owners around the state of New Mexico to recognize the signs of suicidal ideation and what that might look like when you're buying a gun. So when somebody comes in, wants to buy a gun, doesn't care what kind it is, has cash, seems deregulated, all of those are signs that they shouldn't be purchasing a gun, and the gun shop can refuse to sell the gun. And I think we're up to, it's either 4 or 14 states right now are doing them, and they're hugely successful. Colorado has a great program. And so that's something we'd like to see implemented in New Mexico as well.
Did the gun shop owners get some kind of a benefit from this other than feeling like they were good people?
I think that's all they need. I mean, I know like the Outdoorsman, which is our gun shop here, he brags, he's always saying nobody that's ever bought a gun from my store has ever hurt themselves or somebody else. Well, for one, how would he know? It's a stupid comment. But two, I know 2 families where this is exactly what happened, and they sold the gun, and both families lost a family member. So I don't think the Outdoorsman is a good example, but I do think that the program was started in New Hampshire by a gun shop owner who did inadvertently sell a gun to somebody who died by suicide, and he created this program.
Yeah, because it just seems like they're losing a sale. So they would
Yeah.
tend to not judge somebody as suicidal.
Right? Yeah.
Have you ever done anything like this? Something a temple could do is, there's a great site called No More Gun Stocks where you can look at your portfolio. which
Oh,
people
that's a
have
good thing to
here,
do, yeah.
make sure that you're not investing in any company that sells or has an interest in guns.
Yeah. No,
And
that's
it's kind of,
that's
it would
smart.
be like something, certainly because in this congregation, a lot of people have stock portfolios.
yeah.
And that would be a really good thing to say. We
Right.
could do it also for oil and gas. Nobody would be able to invest in anything.
And
But
throwing
it's-
cigarettes and alcohol.
No, but it's really important and it's really good, for a lot of, I mean, that one, there's not so many there's not so many mutual funds that have gun stocks, but there are some.
Oh
and you
yeah.
can
No,
invest.
we told our
Yeah,
folks
no, I
not
told
to.
my person, but the same thing, but it's something for the environment too, that Temple
Yeah.
should look at, because we have a portfolio, and any of the Temple's money is in
Right.
anything with gun stocks or
Right.
oil and gas.
That's pretty interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
When it comes to lobbying, I'd also recommend to lobby our national legislators, senators, and congressmen, because it's only been in recent years that Congress funded the CDC
Yep.
to do any epidemiology on gun violence. And there are bills pending in Congress now, both in the House and the Senate, that look at funding increased behavioral health programs and adolescents, particularly through school health programs, particularly with the idea of decreasing suicidality. So there's things on the federal as well as the state level that can help reduce the toll of gun violence, both death and injury.
And New Mexico got that. The CDC money was odd. It was during the Trump years. It wasn't much. It was for 40 million, but New Mexico actually worked hard to get some of their grant money. So we got some faster grants through the Department of Health, and they're actually helping with our data. So, that was hardly any moment. I wish they would put more in terms of funding. Because data is important. Anything else?
Thank you.
Does
As
anybody
usual,
else?
great.
Does anybody else have anything? I'm gonna get out of my corner here. All right. Well, good evening, guys.
Thank you very much.
Good thing. Take care.